It is my pleasure to welcome David Trulio, who is President and CEO of the Reagan Foundation and head of the Reagan National Defense Forum, which I'm just going to try to call RNDF for the rest of the conversation because it's easier. But it's so nice to have you here, David. We go back a few years, but we haven't had the chance to reconnect since you've taken on this role. And I just wanted to reach out and say welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. I'm really thrilled to be on with you. I salute you for what you and your team have built at the Cipher Brief and this podcast with its tremendous reach, and excited to engage. And we go back many years. I think we first crossed paths at the Aspen Security Forum, and right. Unfortunately, our national security challenges only seem to grow and become more complex. But I think that, if I can speak for both of us, that's a motivation for our work, and I'm happy to dive in with you.
Absolutely right, because I think it's been some 10 years, and my gosh, how the world has changed in that decade, David, in ways that I don't think either one of us saw coming. But I'll definitely speak for me. I didn't see coming in a lot of ways. I wonder if we could focus just for a minute on sort of the origin story. For listeners who may not be familiar, how did the Reagan National Defense Forum, which is now one of the most prestigious forums in the country when it comes to national security, and I say that as someone who hosts our own Cipher Brief Threat Conference, which is also very prestigious. So we know there's like a small circle of folks who really pour their heart and soul into sort of connecting the right folks. And I wanted to ask you, what gap was this particular forum created to fill?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a really important one. I came into this role about 3 years ago. But my first time at the Reagan National Defense Forum was when I myself was a senior defense official back in 2018. And I came and participated, and I was blown away. And huge credit goes to Roger Zackheim, who leads our Reagan Institute in Washington, D.C., Bob Cochran, who is our Director of External Relations. Those two are among the founding fathers of the Reagan National Defense Forum, which started a dozen years ago. Huge credit also goes to Congressman Buck McKeon, who played a key role from his role in the Armed Services Committee in helping facilitate this. The origin, as I have learned and come to understand and really appreciate, especially as somebody who came out of the defense industry, is that while there were many gatherings and convenings within specific communities in defense, say Navy, and then within Navy there might be Navy Air Power, or Army, there might be Army Aviation, there might be Armor, and so on, or a big conference like AUSA. There was not a convening where the top leadership of the defense community, both governmental, executive and legislative branch, and industry and innovators, would come together to talk at that top leadership level about the challenges and opportunities facing the nation when it came to national defense. So huge credit to those I just mentioned and others who saw that need and stepped right in and built what is now a franchise. And I can say that not only with great pride, but also as somebody who can't claim credit for having come up with it. I just see it for what it is, as this great success where it has become the must-attend gathering for so many of the nation's top leaders in defense.
That's right. And I'm very proud to say the Cipher Brief is planning on being there to cover the forum this year as well, as you open it up to a lot of the different media organizations will be there. The forum is really grounded too, and by my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, by President Reagan's peace through strength philosophy, which we've heard a lot more recently again. And when RNDF was conceived, I'm wondering, how did the founders imagine that principle would translate into what's really become a modern defense gathering?
Yeah, well, as you said, exactly right, Suzanne. It's guided by President Reagan's philosophy of peace through strength. And RNDF, the Reagan National Defense Forum, brings together leaders from across the political spectrum and those key stakeholders in the defense community. So we, obviously, as those who advance President Reagan's legacy and principles, we're very vocal about peace through strength, but what's really been remarkable is how we have succeeded in bringing together Republicans, Democrats, independents around that broad concept. Of course, there are disagreements about the particulars. That's healthy. Actually, President Reagan, when he established the Reagan Library, said he wanted it to be a dynamic intellectual forum where policymakers debated the future. So we are living up to that legacy. And I think the key is we have been entrusted with one of the greatest nations in the history of the world, and with that comes a huge responsibility to steer it, and there's no more central or vital role for government than to ensure the security of its citizenry. And the Department of Defense, now the Department of War, and the military branches have a really sacred duty. And by bringing together all of those leaders, we can review and assess policies that strengthen Americans' national defense in what you and I both know and what your listeners know is a really complex and challenging threat environment, which I would say has gotten, in our lifetimes, appreciably more challenging and complex. And I'm happy to go into that further with you.
It really is. And I have to tell you, too, like hats off for finding a forum where it is bipartisan, where you have multiple voices across the spectrum who are coming to engage and bring their expertise to the table, because it's not always easy to do. And I really respect the forums that make that kind of front and center.
If I could just jump in on that,
Yeah.
Suzanne, because we've had 11 defense forums. The next one will be in about a week from when we're recording this. Actually, next week.
December 6th.
Yeah, December 5th and 6th. But for 10 out of the 11 defense forums that we've actually had, we've had the person who's either acting or the actual Secretary of Defense participate. Regardless of if it's a Republican administration or a Democrat administration, this is a place where leaders, executive branch, legislative branch, regardless of their party affiliation, or in a few cases actually independent senators and so on, can come and really debate these issues which are so central to our present and our future.
Yeah, and healthy debate, I think, is very important. Also symbolic, the forum is held at the Reagan Library, which I understand the symbolism there. But what does that setting contribute, do you think, to sort of the event's tone and character, and how is it different from just doing another gathering in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, as somebody who spent 19 years in Washington, I can tell you it would not work as well if we tried to do it there. And I say that with affection for D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. Look, part of what makes it so special is that it's an immersive environment where it takes a little effort to get here. We're only an hour from LAX. But if I were to say to you, we're going to get all the top leaders from the national security community, including industry leaders, and get them all to the LA area and have them drive about an hour to get to a 400-acre site at the top of a hill, that is not the easiest thing to do. But having achieved that, what that then enables us to do is to have a very immersive, controlled environment that's very conducive to thoughtful reflection, to literally walking up to friends, colleagues, or somebody you've never met before, but somebody you know shares a commitment to advancing the nation's security. And it's just while it's a formal event, and it's not casual in that sense. The topic is very serious. There's a kinship and a fellowship that is enabled by virtue of having everybody here on this beautiful site. We're at the top of a hill. It's 400 acres. The Reagan Library is a very special place with sweeping vistas. So much of the forum takes place in our Air Force One pavilion, where the plane that President Reagan and several other presidents use as Air Force One is literally there, and we're under the wings with sweeping vistas, and there are events all around the campus. So it's very special, but again, conducive to thoughtful, substantive discussion and debate.
Yeah, for those who haven't had the chance to visit the library, I've been there once to a prior forum, and it is stunning. And I do think there is a lot of value in not checking your watch every 5 minutes and thinking about where you have to be, but in able to really, as you said, focus and immerse yourself in these issues with some of the brightest minds and obviously the leaders of the country on these topics, which is really important. When you look back, David, at RNDF in the early years, what do you think, even though you came in later, what do you think some of the core challenges were then? And then how do you think some of those challenges have evolved in the world to where we are today? Because it's a really complicated environment.
Yeah, I assume you mean in terms of the challenges the nation faces in terms
Yeah,
of,
exactly. Right. And then how the forum sort of addresses those challenges.
Absolutely. So I think part of it, if you go back 11, 12 years, Obviously, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq really dominated the headlines. The counterterrorism fight, ISIS, and so on were those issues endure. However, they were really at the forefront of the nation. My own opinion is that while people recognize the challenges of the People's Republic of China run by the Chinese Communist Party, it's one thing to know that intellectually. It's a different thing to act on that knowledge in a way where you've really internalized the long-term challenges presented by that. Obviously, technology then was advanced, but nowhere nearly as advanced now in an era of AI and machine learning. So those are differences. If we were to go through the historical record and look at the agendas of year 2 and year 5 and year 7 and so on, we would see certainly we would be reflecting what dominated the national headlines around Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the things that's particularly interesting and I think especially valuable is a wide appreciation across the national security space about the interplay between money and budgeting and the economy and having a strong national defense. In the first Trump administration, we certainly heard about economic security is national security. I think if you look to the Biden administration and Secretary Gina Raimondo, she is somebody, a very capable leader who understood the connection between economic security, commerce and business, and our overall national security. We were extremely pleased and privileged to have her as the first Commerce Secretary to come to the Reagan National Defense Forum, and she came twice. So we're super excited about that. We are very grateful and excited that this year, for the first time ever, we will have the OMB Director, Russell Vought, come to the Reagan National Defense Forum. That is reflective of the evolution, I think, of a more, if I could say, my opinion, more holistic understanding of what drives defense and national security. And I think Russ Vought is a great example because, after all, peace through strength is literally impossible without proper resourcing. And so having the OMB director participate for the first time is really noteworthy, and his participation is particularly timely because he has become a partner for the Pentagon, including Navy Secretary Phelan. Russ Vought is visiting shipyards. He's bringing the weight of the White House to the goal of rebuilding the defense industrial base. So I think that's really important and exciting that our peace through strength has many drivers, and it extends beyond the services and OSD.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I feel like that's also really critical. And what we're seeing now is some of the changes at the Pentagon. And I think Steve Feinberg has had his hand on quite a few of the procurement changes, for example, just trying to put the U.S. in a position where they can be more competitive because they can buy things faster and maybe not from the traditional people. That's a really important part of defense, isn't it, as well?
It's as somebody who was in the industry itself, I think it's of existential importance to make sure that the rules and the laws and the setup is simultaneously committed to protecting the taxpayer, making sure there's ethical behavior, and at the same time making sure that the warfighter gets the tools that he or she needs to be successful so that we don't overpay, but also that we get capabilities fielded quickly and in time so that it's relevant to whatever the challenges are at hand. So I think this is just a hugely consequential time. We're seeing really interesting moves within the administration and with some voices in Congress around acquisition reform. And while it may not be the most glamorous or eye-catching issue, it really has an impact in terms of defense capability.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the thing, it's certainly not as exciting as talking about some of the technologies that are being developed quickly, for example. But when you're looking at the greater competition with China and the ability for the United States to buy quickly and to buy, the best available products on the market for whatever the mission is, I think it's so much sexier that way.
Sure.
Put it that way. I'm wondering too, has there been anything, when you and your team sit down to say, all right, we've got folks for a day and a half. how can we move the needle in some of these conversations? Like, what is your real goal when you're thinking about putting together an agenda for something like this?
Yeah,
Because you've got a number of sessions.
absolutely. I think part of the key is to drive, how can we drive the national conversation on issues that really matter? If if it's just wave top conversation, that's actually not really helpful. But when we bring together these top leaders from the executive branch, legislative branch, and from industry, and they're in conversation on stage with leading journalists who are always, of course, by definition, looking to find news, maybe make news. That's very helpful, and because it's bipartisan, right? There's a range of views on stage, or nonpartisan in the case of the uniformed military participants, of course. That fosters a very positive atmosphere. Also, off stage, and I have every expectation, Suzanne, you'll do interviews with people off stage who are going to go on the record and speak to you about what they believe is necessary to advance the country's security under that umbrella of peace through strength. So I think topic-wise, it's going to range from everything from Midnight Hammer to lessons from that and insights from that to, of course, the implications of AI and what that means for the nation's security, and also the defense industrial base, right? I mean, look at how out front people like Secretary Phelan have been about the importance of the maritime industrial base. And I think insights from a former industry leader and now a top government leader such as him will be really valuable. So it's on stage, it's off stage, but then also an added piece is the fellowship that comes from bringing these leaders together to interact and interplay with each other. Some of them go way back. You and I will see lots of old friends when we're there, but we're also going to make new acquaintances and hopefully new friends who, again, share this commitment to America's long-term security. And we may disagree on the specifics, but to the extent we can civilly, and it's always been civil, go back and forth, that sharpens us and helps us drive impact in the weeks and months after the event itself.
Yeah. And I mean, I would have to ask you the question that, David, when you and I met, artificial intelligence was a thing, but it wasn't the thing. And now I think it's become the thing. And I'm wondering, when you're looking at sort of how you're balancing out the speakers and the topics so that you can really help foster that really valuable engagement, how much were you thinking about AI this year? Or were there other issues that were more kind of front and center for you?
Well, if you see a smile on my face, it's because it's actually literally the second thing we're going to talk about. The opening plenary is going to be about our National Defense Survey and where the public stands, and obviously where the American people are is in a representative republic is incredibly important. But the very second discussion item will be deterrence by design, advancing AI for competitive advantage over China. So there you go. It's a really big deal. It's front and center. We will have industry leaders from like Joe Lonsdale, who's also a trustee of the Reagan Foundation. But Joe Lonsdale is somebody who co-founded Palantir, has had an enormously successful career. He's a managing partner at 8 VC. We will have the CEO of C3AI in conversation with other leaders such as Horacio Rozansky from Booz Allen, and government leaders as well. So it's going to come up fast, and we'll have some very, very sharp people on that topic.
Yeah. So I want to ask you the sort of obvious question, which is I think a lot of people would really benefit from being able to hear these sessions, but not everyone gets to come to this forum. So how are you, I mean, you've got media there, but are there ways that people will be able to engage online?
It's really easy. It's great news. Anybody can go to the reaganfoundation.org, go to our events page, and you can watch the whole thing. You can sign up and literally watch the whole thing. It'll be available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel afterwards. YouTube, and it's Reagan Foundation at YouTube. So the sessions on stage and all that thought leadership and all those insights is available to anybody with an internet connection, which we think is very, very important. And in addition to that, the press, leaders in the press such as you will be there, and obviously will report from there as well. So
Yeah.
we think that is very important and effective in terms of sharing the insights.
Yeah, the Cipher Wave will be sharing a lot of images on our social media, a lot of the highlights, the headlines, the behind-the-scenes things that we're seeing that I think people would probably really enjoy and appreciate as well. So there was another quote that President Reagan was very well known for that is probably one of my favorites, which is "trust but verify." So I didn't want to leave this conversation with you today, David, to ask you how that quote still sort of thrives and is alive today at the foundation.
Well, it absolutely, we invoke that all the time around here, and it is important. It's a vital life principle. Actually, from my read of President Reagan and what he said about it, and that phrase, he actually adapted it from a Russian phrase. So it was throughout his engagement with the now former Soviet Union that came into being, and it's a super important guiding principle. Look, when we look back at President Reagan's legacy and what he accomplished, he actually spoke and wrote about how he had been trying to engage with his Soviet counterpart throughout his first term, and the way he put it, he literally said, quote, "The Soviet leaders kept dying on me," and because that's true. They in fairly rapid succession, they passed away, and then Mikhail Gorbachev came on the scene, and as President Reagan said, quote, when we arrived in Geneva, I felt that possibly we had a chance of getting somewhere with a new man in the Kremlin, and we actually just had literally the 40th anniversary of the Geneva Summit. It was November 19 to 21 of 1985. So that was the first of those four really important summits between President Reagan and General Secretary Gorbachev. A year later, in October of '86, the Reykjavik Summit, of course, very important. Then the Washington Summit in December of '87, and then the Moscow Summit, the last summit, in May of 1988.
Yeah. One of my other favorites is Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I think, for those of us who are a little bit older, we remember sort of hearing that and the way in which that was delivered. And it reminds me, David, that deterrence was another issue that was critically important to the president. It's something that he was actually very effective at. And I also think that that's probably going to be an issue on stage today, because as you're thinking about deterrence and how the threats have changed with technology and everything else that we've talked about over the last 20 or so minutes, deterrence is still probably front and center as well, is it?
Absolutely. And President Reagan fundamentally understood that it's very important to talk, it's very important to develop relationships with adversaries or potential adversaries and try to get to a better outcome, but you have to be backed up by strength. In fact, back in 1980, he said, "We know only too well that war comes not when the forces of freedom are strong, but when they are weak. It is then that tyrants are tempted." Right? So tyrants understand power in a way that in the comfort of America in 2025, one might be able to overlook. But if you're not backed up by the ability to exercise force if you have to, you won't be taken as seriously. By the way, I think that's part of why it's so important to look at the Reagan legacy with allies and partners. That's actually reflected in the Reagan National Defense Forum. We have ministers of defense and ambassadors from many friendly countries, allies and partners of the United States, coming, we're very excited about that. And we see the Trump administration working with allies and partners around the world as well. And that tradition of embracing allies and partners and seeing that as something that is helpful to U.S. security is a really great thing.
Certainly
Who
a sign
thought
of
Sweden and
strength, yeah.
Finland would be in NATO now, but they are. And
Yeah.
you can see the great relationship, for example, that President
Yeah.
Trump has developed with the president of Finland.
Yes.
That makes America stronger.
Yeah, and they are on the front lines too when
Yes.
you talk about Russia and aggression, and deterrence is a very important word for them as well.
They have a
David,
700-plus mile border with Russia, and the Finns do, and they have a great army, which is, to your point about deterrence.
Yeah, and one of our favorite issues too is really focused on the gray zone sort of era and hybrid warfare and whatever it is that you want to call it. And that's one thing that you can find out more about at thecipherbrief.com as well. David Trulio, are you nervous about the kickoff? Are you excited about it? What's the vibe there in
Well,
the Valley?
we never take anything for granted. We always bring our A game. We don't take anyone's participation for granted. We don't take anything logistically for granted. But just speaking very personally, the team here is amazing. They've done it 11 times before with great success. So I'm bringing my A game, but I'm not nervous at all. I'm excited, and there's a lot going on. I'm pleased that technology is such that the banging of the creation of a tent not far from my window is not being picked up by this microphone, but
Nope.
the campus is being transformed with tent and portable meeting spaces and other things like that to host all of our guests. And we're super excited because once the Defense Forum concludes, we'll actually keep going in terms of following on. Our team is going to continue to brief lawmakers and other national security players about our work. We do dozens of briefings every year. In March, we have a National Security Innovation Base program and a summit around that in March in D.C., where we have a report card that measures the health and effectiveness and resilience of our nation's innovation base. And so the work doesn't stop, and we're very excited by it. But look, at the end of the day, the stakes for America and the world could not be higher. And again, the most fundamental role of government is to protect its citizens. And we're super excited by this work and grateful that you'll be here and you'll be an important part of that.
Really looking forward to it, David. I think anybody who has the dedication to pull together a group of people like this and do it in a way where you're encouraging conversation and debate is very much needed and really valuable. So we're looking forward to also following along. I'm just going to ask you to give a plug one more time for the website for people who want to find out about the agenda.
Absolutely. ReaganFoundation.org. So ReaganFoundation.org. Just go to the events page. You'll see it there. And you can sign up. It'll be on our YouTube channel as well. It's at Reagan Foundation on YouTube. And in addition to all the DoD and industry leaders, we're going to have senators from Joni Ernst and Deb Fischer to Tim Kaine and Chris Coons, and there'll be over 36 members of Congress. So we're just really excited and grateful.
Excellent. Well, we're grateful for your time today. David Trulio is the president and CEO of the Reagan Foundation and head of the Reagan National Defense Forum. Our thanks to you and your team. We know, believe me, how much work it is to pull something like this off. And again, really appreciate the contribution and the leadership and the conversation here.
Thanks again, Suzanne. I look forward to seeing you and your colleagues in a few days.
That sounds great. And it was wonderful to have you here in the studio. Thank you.